Hey, Sens fans, welcome to this special episode of the Senstennial podcast. We're doing a video today about the signing of Vladimir Tarasenko. News broke late on Thursday night that Vladimir Tarasenko had signed a one-year deal with the Ottawa Senators at a cap hit of $5 million. And that 1 year, it does have a no-trade clause attached. Big news, leaves the Sens in obviously a cap crunch. They need to sign Shane Pinto still, and only have about 32 grand in cap space. So, wanted to kick things off, and Bennett, I want to get your take right off the top. What do you think about adding Vladimir Tarasenko to the Sens?
Yeah, I think it's a really intriguing signing. The Senators obviously had a hole on that top six left wing side after dealing Alex DeBrincat to the Red Wings. Rumors about Tarasenko looking for a home for on a short-term deal had been rampant. The Senators had been linked to him for a while. I commend, Doyon for getting it done. I think it's so first and foremost, before even touching the player, it's encouraging to see the Senators in up against the cap for the first time, like truly up against it, not just where we have to think about the cap in an abstract sense, but where we actually need to make moves to be compliant. It's kind of nice. I mean, this is how teams are generally speaking supposed to operate if you want to be competitive. And you can quibble about some of the contracts and how we spent some of that money, and we will. But I think generally speaking, it shows ambition from the front office. That's what you want to see. So curious, we're all hopeful it's going to work out. A little bit about the player. I mean, guy's got 270 career goals. He's got a career goal per game clip of 0.41, which is about 0.2 shy of the man himself, Alex Ovechkin. So, this guy is not, his days of being an elite sniper are past him, but this is a guy who knows how to score goals. He knows how to win. He won the cup in St. Louis. So I think on a 1 year, $5 million deal, it's super low risk for a player of someone that we know can make an impact if he's healthy. That's the other thing that jumps off the stat sheet for Tarasenko is, the goals that he scored throughout his career and the fact that he has played an 82 game season precisely one time. So that's not fantastic. We have another goal scorer on the team already who has problems staying healthy, but I guess the hope is that, at least one of either Norris or Tarasenko will be around to, clap those power play bombs, and maybe both of them. I'm curious to see how they think he's going to work in the lineup. Is he going to be able to form some chemistry with someone like Norris? It can be difficult sometimes when you have two guys in the same line that both want to be the trigger man. What that means from like a chemistry perspective, you're putting a lot of pressure on Batherson in that situation to find two guys, when you're in the other team's end instead of just one. But I mean, good problems to have, having more guys than just one who knows how to score goals. So yeah, I think it's an interesting signing. I think it's, a very low risk that's worth taking. And hopefully we can see him, recapture some of his past goal scoring form.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, off the top, you mentioned, he's not the player he once was. I do want to say though that, the season before the one that just passed, so the 21-22 season, he had 82 points in 75 games and 34 goals, almost 50 assists. He had a hell of a season. And he's a guy who doesn't take a ton of penalties, which is really nice because that'll obviously come back to bite you. Obviously good at power play, good at even strength, very important. Now, obviously, the one kind of downside is people have pointed out his defensive deficiencies, and I totally get it. The thing that I think is important to note is that I know a lot of people they'll look at plus minus and they'll use that as like an indicator of defensive ability. He was a minus player when he was on the St. Louis Blues, and the St. Louis Blues, I'm pretty sure I was just checking, and I'll see if I still have it. But I think they finished like fifth or sixth last in the league with goals against. So when Tarasenko was on the Blues, yeah, they that team let up a lot of goals against. Binnington, not very good since winning that cup. So that obviously doesn't help. Since he went to the Rangers, his plus minus, if that's what you want to base it on, did improve. He was a +4 with them in the regular season. Obviously, I don't hold a ton of stock in plus minus, but I do think it's important to point out that, like, if he was a minus player on both teams, to me, that shows, okay, he was a minus player on a non-playoff team and on a playoff caliber team. That's not a good sign. But when it changes based off the quality of roster, I think that's important to note.
Yeah.
Um,
I
you
always
know,
say plus minus, it's a sledgehammer, not a scalpel. It can tell you broad strokes about a player's defensive or even strength proficiency, but it tells you about as much about the team that he plays on as it does about the player.
exactly. And I mean, looking at his hockey viz chart, it's not incredible. I'll make sure to include it in the episode. Defensively, obviously, he had some issues last season, but offensively on the power play and even strength, that's where he gets it done. And honestly, the Sens really need even strength goal scoring, and Tarasenko will help with that. So that's obviously going to be a huge boon to them. Um, I don't know if well, I think you touched on potential line mates for him. Yeah, it does seem like the obvious spot for him would be to line up on the left wing of Josh Norris and then play on the line with Drake Batherson as well. Again, people point out that Batherson didn't have a good defensive season last year. It's pretty interesting because I tried to make the argument a few months ago that it actually wasn't Drake Batherson's defense that resulted in him having a poor plus minus. It was actually the inability for that line to score at even strength that led to Batherson, Pinto, and DeBrincat not having a great plus minus. DeBrincat had some defensive deficiencies last season that were outside of his career norm, but Batherson actually people will tell me I'm full of BS, and that's fine. But statistically, he actually had a fine defensive season. I think it's really that lack of even strength goal scoring that resulted in him having such a low plus minus. But that's besides the point. All I'm trying to say is I think if Batherson continues, comes back from his injury at 100% next season and can provide, the level of defense that he can provide, he'll be fine. Josh Norris, same thing. And then Tarasenko, even if he's somewhat of a liability, you have the other two guys there that'll help him. One last thing I want to say before I throw it back to you for any other comments is when it comes to Tarasenko playing on line with Norris and Batherson, all of those players can dish it. All of them can shoot it. I think it actually causes problems for the defense. If that is indeed the trio that the Sens line up and on their second line, because you have to cover all three guys. Any one of them can rip it.
Yeah.
Any one of them can pass it. So it's
Yeah.
like, who do you cover, right?
Yeah, they all have a great shot.
Yeah, so it'll be an interesting line. Sometimes, obviously, when it comes to like skill forwards all in one line, it's like, well, will the chemistry work out? That remains to be seen. But on paper, it looks damn fine. And we're going to take a really quick break. But after we come back from the break, I think we're going to talk about how this works in terms of depth and what that means for a guy like Dominic Kubalik, who's recently added to the roster, who could potentially be on their way out to make room for Vladimir Tarasenko and a Shane Pinto contract extension, and maybe touch on one or other two things that come to mind. So stay tuned and yeah. Hey, Sens fans, it's baseball season, and new customers who download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN can bet just $5 and score $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's code THPN only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Massachusetts, call 800-327-5050 or visit gamblinghelpline.ma.org. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Kansas, call 1-800-522-4700 on behalf of Boot Hill Casino Resort, Kansas. In West Virginia, gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. All games regulated by the West Virginia Lottery. Please play responsibly. In partnership with Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. 21 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gambling resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. 1 boost per eligible game. Opt-in required. Max bet $50. 10 plus lag required for 100% boost. Eligibility, wagering, and deposit restrictions apply. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/baseball terms. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for listening so far. We really appreciate your support. Please consider subscribing if you've enjoyed the content so far. And as always, you can find us on Twitter or X, Instagram, Facebook.
Oh my
I know. Threads,
God.
all that stuff. We're out there, and yeah, appreciate it. The link should be in the comments, and yeah, please feel free to follow us on there. But yeah, what I wanted to get to was Dominic Kubalik. There was, when he was acquired, there was talk. Okay, well, Pierre Dorion said he'll slide in the top 6 if the Sens don't make another move. And to me, I'm like, I think they're going to make another move. There were a lot of rumors about if Ottawa was going to pursue Tarasenko. It seemed like they were obviously in on him. So for you, let's say that the third line ends up being like Kubalik, Pinto, and a guy like Joseph. What do you think about how this helps Ottawa's depth going into the season?
Well, we know how much depth was a problem for us last year with Norris going down very early in the season. You had a guy like Pinto, playing up in the lineup in a place where, not that he, was like, he was like a little bit out of his depth, but it's more just like he's a player that's better deployed in a third line role. He has skill and upside, and that can shine more when you're not having to stack up against the other team's top 4. So yeah, I think it can only be a good thing. You mentioned a potential third line if there's no further roster moves of, Pinto, Joseph, and Kubalik. I think that has some speed, some skill, the ability to, generate some possession. I think that's a really good place to be in. And then, you have your fourth line can, you only have one line that's kind of like questionable at that point, which is what you want, generally speaking. So I think, yeah, I think it's good. I think, having bringing on talented players just makes it so much easier for everyone in the lineup. There's a knock-on effect all the way down through the whole 16. And yeah, you just it's good. It'll help, and we hope that they can find some chemistry with those lines, as we're sort of imagining them right now, and that we'll have a little bit more balanced offense coming into this year. Because we saw a monster season from Giroux to Chuck and Stutzla. That was one of the best lines in the division, and there's a lot of competition in the Atlantic for that title. But yeah, if you can have some other lines chip in a little bit, even if it means you lean less on Stutzla and to Chuck, that's okay. The best teams, they can hit you with all 4 lines. So that's what you want to see.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that this will give Ottawa better depth going into the season. I'll actually contradict myself because I was bringing up before the break how the Sens will need to make cap room somehow. I did actually refresh cap friendly, and Ottawa must have moved someone down to the minors who is waiver eligible, because it actually shows now that they have a projected cap space of just under 900,000. So, but cap friendly is not showing me what move they made to do that. Whatever. But all that to say, if Joseph is the one who ends up being moved out, I assume the Sens would have to give up an asset. I think that's only because of his lack of offensive production. The Ian Mendez episode that unfortunately I know you weren't able to be there with us, but Matt and I talked to Ian Mendez, and we think that there's definitely a good chance that Joseph bounces back this season. He really struggled at 5-on-5. He struggled with injuries last season, but he's a good defensive player and a good PK player. And I understand the Sens needing to trade someone to make the money work and to get Pinto on the team because he's obviously an important player. So, if they have to move out an asset, and that means you get Tarasenko and Pinto and Joseph and an asset like a draft pick or something are going out, I get that. And I think it makes sense to make the money work. Eric Brandstrom is another name because he's got a 1 year, $2 million contract. So some people are saying, moving out Brandstrom's contract again would make room for a Shane Pinto extension. But I wanted to hear your thoughts. And I mean, those are the two obvious candidates. But is there anyone on the roster other than those two who you could see them kind of moving some money out to get Shane Pinto extended?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those times where you go back to the what I consider a head scratching move of bringing back Hamonic on a 1.1 million for 2 years. I mean, that's it seems like a small contract at the time, but now when you're staring and we're counting, our room against the cap and the hundreds of thousands instead of the tens and millions, all of a sudden those little $1.1 million a year deals add up. And when you're paying it for a guy that most of us expect to be a seventh defenseman, if this team is well coached, then that's a problem. And that's 1.1 million. When you add it to 900,000, it's after hours. So I don't want to do any math, but that could be a Pinto contract, right? Like a team friendly one. And it could spare you having to move a guy like Joseph, who like you're saying, like I am high on Joseph. I know he didn't have a great year this past season, but I think he's shown that he has the skills to hang on that third line, and he, kills penalties. He has a lot of speed. He fulfills a useful role within the lineup. I'd hate to have to part with him in order to accommodate someone like Tarasenko. Not that I think that, bringing in Tarasenko was a problem. We just talked about how we think it's a really low risk, potentially high reward move, but it's just like, you don't want to have to sacrifice depth that you just got. Like we're just talking about how this team is now deeper than it was last season, which is great. And then the last thing you want to do is make this team less deep immediately after.
Yeah.
So I think our forward depth was sketchier last season than our defensive depth. Our defensive depth looked bad because of injuries by the end of the year. But I think that on paper, our defensive depth is actually pretty good going into the season. We've got Shabbat and Chikrin, we've got Zub and Sanderson, you've got like maybe JBD, Clevin, on that bottom pairing, you've got Brandster, maybe you still have Hamonic, like there's enough guys there to swing it. I'd rather see us move out a defender than a forward in this case. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, and I think in the case of Brandstrom, it would be hard to see him go, but I feel like there's kind of something there, and only because, Tyler Clevin recently did an interview and he mentioned that this past year's playoffs, he's like, there wasn't a single guy in the finals or something like that who was under 6 feet tall. And I thought it's kind of funny because I know like Sens fans and Branny truthers and those small kings represent. I know that we love Brandstrom. He had a really good season this year at both ends of the ice, which you love to see. But at the end of the day, Clevin says a comment like that, and it was just interesting to me. And I don't think he was trying to take like, kind of like a passive flyby shot at Brandstrom. But I think the Ottawa Senators play a certain way. They obviously pursue players of a certain archetype. They went out and got McEwen this offseason, signed to a 3 year deal. Travis Hamonic, they bring back on a 2 year deal, like we just talked about. So obviously they like the guys that have the edge to them, who have the grit. And Tyler Clevin said he was looking to make the team out of camp. Like that was his goal. So if that's truly his goal and the team is like, okay, like we'll give you a shot. You gotta do this though. I mean, it's a risk, but Clevin in a small sample size last season was good defensively. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there. But I think if, like you said, because Ottawa has probably, I would say, 7 or 8 guys who could play defense, maybe shedding a guy like Brandstrom, as much as it pains me to say that, would make more sense than shedding a guy like Matthew Joseph, who I think you need more in terms of what he can offer your roster. The minutes that he plays, especially on the penalty kill. So it's hard, right? But like you said, Ottawa hasn't been like a true cap team in I don't know how many years. 2017 is like as close as they got, as far as I can recall, in the last 15 plus years. So it's interesting, and it's honestly, I'd rather be in this predicament where you only have a couple depth guys you need to sign rather than like Ottawa being at the cap and it's like, oh, we need to sign Tim Stützle. That would be,
Mhm.
oh crap, like we're
Yeah.
in trouble here. Um, but anyway, I don't want to ramble too much on that. My final question that I'll pose to you for tonight's episode is, with the addition of Tarasenko, do you think that now on paper, Ottawa looks like they can be that playoff team, at least contend for a wild card, if not third in the division?
I think that contending for sure, for that playoff spot, but it's like we've been saying all along, it's going to come down to goaltending. I mean, I think that Tarasenko is a great addition. I think it's a smart move, a risk worth taking. We've said that already. If he, captures some magic and chips in with, 25, maybe even 30 goals, hey, that makes this team a lot more dangerous. But none of that matters if Korpisalo can't keep him out, and we're that's a much riskier bet that we're taking on Korpisalo than we are on Tarasenko, and one much more likely to torpedo our playoff chances. So I think adding forward depth is great, and it's going to make this team a lot more balanced, and that's really important. But it's regular seasons are defined by goaltending, playoffs are defined. Everything comes down to goaltending, and yeah, if we get that, anything's possible. If we don't, we'll never get anywhere. So
Yeah, and I think it'll be good because after this video is released, later we're going to release like in a few days' time and kind of let the news, get out and everybody be able to process already this stuff with Vladimir Tarasenko. But later in the week, we're going to post the episode that myself and Matt recorded with Aaron Portsline. So I'm excited for that one. And we do talk, the entire episode is about, Portsline's coverage of Korpisalo for the bulk of his career. And I think people will really be interested in what Aaron Portsline had to say about him and maybe give the fan base a bit more confidence and add a little bit more personality to the guy. Because I think Aaron had some anecdotes that are pretty good. So definitely, I agree with you though. Goaltending will be something to watch and healthy goaltending because that is going to be something that the Sens truly need this season if they're going to compete for a playoff spot.
yeah,
So
and health in general, because we're placing a lot of our theoretical goals in two injury riddled baskets in Josh Norris and Vladimir Tarasenko. You're banking on a lot of your offense coming from two guys that in the last number of seasons have had a very hard time staying healthy. Dorian announced that Norris's shoulder is fixed now, quote unquote. I don't know precisely what he said after he came back from the last two injuries, but he wasn't like, oh yeah, well, it's not fixed yet, but we'll see what happens. The idea is after every one of these surgeries, it's fixed. So who knows whether it is or not? We'll find out. I guess that's my other major concern is that if we're partway through the season and Tarasenko and Norris are down, then this team's going to be really scraping for that offense once again.
100%. And let's hope that they're not.
Yeah,
Because I just
yeah,
don't I
yeah,
don't want to handle any more disappointing seasons, Bennett. I need this one, okay?
yeah. I know. That's
Uh,
it. Yeah, that's my one concern is that let's hope that they're not. There's a lot of hope going into the Sens being a playoff team last year. Let's hope Korpisalo can have a good year. Let's hope Norris can stay healthy.
put on
And
my hopium mask right now.
yeah, yeah, you gotta. We're all gonna be getting high on hopium because yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching this video. Really appreciate it. And hey, hopefully the Sens have a good season. It looks like on paper they have a great top six. Now we got to see it in action and see what the boys can do. Go
Never a
Sens,
dull
go.
moment in Sensland.
We're always the main characters of the NHL. Come on.